So, UFO cover-ups, they are being covered up and yet being exposed at the same time all over the world. Navy SEAL forces the government to reveal that these aliens are real. This video that I'm finna show you guys is with Ryan Graves, and he's finna discuss how real these aliens are. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive in, gang. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Talk Everything 414 podcast. I am the host, Karnage Slaughter. You feel me? The founder. This is the channel where we like to talk, learn, and grow. You feel me? If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. And we diving into this video. Here we have Ryan Graves. And shout out to Dr. Mayim Bialik. Because without her, none of this would be possible. Without her, none of this is possible. Let's dive into this video.
Of War released UAP evidence that had been previously withheld.
This is the biggest cover-up that we've seen.
We start to upgrade our radar systems in our jets. We immediately start to notice that there were objects that shouldn't have been there. These things weren't behaving like a normal platform. They were often completely stationary in very high winds. We can no longer just dismiss it as a radar error. Everything is telling us it's real and it's there. Where did they come from? What are they doing? Why are we not tracking this?
Ryan Graves is the first active duty military pilot to Congress about UAP sightings. His alarming encounters led him to found Americans for Safe Aerospace to encourage the government to disclose information about UAPs.
People are seeing these cubes spheres, they're seeing metallic spheres, elongated spheres. They are reporting higher speeds now, 0.8, 0.9 Mach, while maneuvering. They seem to be able to traverse water, air, and space seamlessly. One of these objects went in between the two aircraft, about 50 feet from the lead aircraft. This is now a documentable near miss, or other near misses had occurred, all of which went unreported. That was shocking to know that 8 people had essentially collectively gone silent and allowed this issue to percolate. This is a problem.
Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik.
And I'm Jonathan Cohen.
And welcome to our breakdown. Today we're going to be speaking to Ryan Graves. He's the first active duty pilot to testify before the government regarding UAP sightings in controlled airspace. He's a former U.S. Navy fighter pilot, and he started seeing things on his flights that he and his colleagues could no longer explain. And when they took it to the higher ups, what they discovered is that these sightings were nothing new. He embarked on an investigation that eventually led him to start safeaerospace.org, where UAPs can be discussed and where we can learn more about what the government knows, what the government doesn't know, and the possibility that sightings might be increasing and might become a danger to more Americans.
We happened to speak to him hours after the government releases previously classified and withheld documents with many more to come, and Ryan gives us a window into an increase in UAP sightings and a breakdown of the characteristics, the movement patterns that defy our understanding of our current technology.
Most importantly, Ryan's going to explain to us what we know and what we still don't know in an attempt to have us all on the same page. What a pleasure and an honor to welcome to the breakdown, Ryan Graves.
Break it down.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Before we get started with all of the incredible things that we want you to explain to us and tell us and walk us through, we can't help but notice that something came out in the news literally as we slept before we got to speak to you. I mean, the timing could not have been more perfect for us. And we were wondering if you can kind of explain what is going on. Is this the age of disclosure? What is...
Right. The age of disclosure, y'all know about that. Of course we all do. I'm sure we all do now. This is the time where we supposed to be getting these disclosures. I'm sorry, I have to fix my mic. We supposed to be getting these disclosures, right? Nobody like Mayim Bialik, Dr. Stephen Greer, and a few others like Ryan Graves talk about this topic, more prominently with confidence. At the end of the day, the disclosure should have been held a long time ago. we should have received this disclosure, years ago when a lot of this stuff first started taking place. You understand what I'm saying? I think that right there was, that was one of the biggest upsets. That was one of the biggest upsets in America, if you ask me. When they started denying us the rights to know about these aliens, when they started denying us the rights to know about all these things that's taking place around America, around the government, around the world. You feel me? This closure day should have been came. You know, I feel like they don't really want us to be disclosed on anything. And then if I go further, I feel like they already partially disclosing us within these small movies, these small segmented movies that they throw out, pitch out to us. That's what they, really disclose to us. They show us little signs and little hints and shit in these movies. And sometimes, I be like, man, do people not get it, or like what's going on? You know what I'm saying? People don't see this with their own eyes. Come on now.
Happening?
Yeah, great questions. And yeah, very exciting timing right now. Just earlier this morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, the Department of War released what I believe to be the first tranche of UAP evidence that had been previously withheld from the public. It includes records from NASA, from the Department of War, some from the FBI. We'll see what else comes. Notably, that does not include information across the intelligence community. And from what I hear from congressional members, I think, seen the full briefing, is that it will likely get progressively more interesting as we go.
Why can't they just release the most interesting stuff right off the bat? Like, this is like a weird reality show we're in.
I know. It does seem a bit scripted. It does seem a bit according to schedule. It's been a long time coming to get to this point. I got involved in this back in 2017. But just a few months ago, for those that recall, there was some back and forth between former President Obama and current President Trump about what the U.S. might have in regards to UAP/UFO. And Trump ended that exchange by making a declaration on social media that he would be releasing, quote unquote, all the files. I don't, there's a lot to unpack as far as what that might mean. However, I have been following this topic closely, as one might imagine, and I am aware that there has been a lot of effort within the government, within different agencies, the FBI, the intelligence communities writ large, specifically ODNI, and there has been infrastructure that has been stood up, governance boards, if you will, in order to collect the large amount of information that has been coming in from pilots, from other military.
And hopefully they can collect that information without denying the information or without telling the public that the information is fake. That, we always get that from these governmental officials. Like, why must y'all tell us it's fake when we know damn well it's real? You know what I'm saying? We ain't crazy. It's a lot of us out here, man, that done seen shit, they done heard shit. We got family members that done seen and heard shit. Family members that done been in the military, in the army, in the Navy. And, they come out and they tell all sorts of things. They seen all sorts of things. And you can't tell me with all your heart that some of this shit is fake or a lot of this shit is fake. We even going so far to hear that a lot of this stuff is created by our own government, by America. It's created by the rogue scientists and the rogue government officials who went rogue and stole this type of information. You feel me? And now they got everybody on a standby looking and waiting on knowledge or waiting on, more information and downloads like, hey, yo, this is what's taking place. This is what we up against. This is what's happening in the world. But are we receiving that? No, we are not. And that's why right now you got a lot of government officials saying out their own mouths that they don't trust their own government. That's crazy. It's crazy, at the end of the day, I feel like, man, it's some shit that can be done, but I don't think they want nothing to be done, I think they just, they slacking. A lot of this shit is on purpose. If you ask me, I believe a lot of these government officials are part of the situations that's taking place. You know what I'm saying? Now, if we do find out they are part of these situations, these missing scientists and shit like that, then what is we gonna do? Is we finna march or vote them out of the office? Is we finna, you feel me, stand up and stand ground? What we gonna do? That's, I want to know that, you know.
members, et cetera, as well as, of course, some historical files, perhaps some that have already been released, perhaps some that have not. But there's, of course, a scale of how good the sensors are. I think we're seeing some of the poor quality ones now. And like I said, if the indications that various Congress people are putting forward, the best is yet to come.
I don't ask this from a partisan, position, because I don't really care what the, political party is of a president who's releasing this kind of information. I think it's an incredible moment in history, no matter what it turns out to be and what the motivation is. But is there anything that you feel we should be concerned about in terms of the timing, in terms of the other things going on in the world? Is this a distraction? Is this some sort of entertainment or theater? Because I want it to be real information, but not all information is created equal or presented equally, right?
Yeah, I think people are always going to bring up the concept of this being distraction, and perhaps it might serve that in a secondary fashion. But for all intents and purposes, from my vantage point, it does seem like there is an honest effort that has been invested into in order to gather and bring forward this information. Now, there are two, I think, categories of information that could be released here. There is perhaps deep programs and information related to that, as far as what the government has known about UAP and how long, and the real goods of what the government may know. Are we exploiting these technologies for our benefit in any technological domains? These are what people will consider, hard disclosure questions. And the person sitting to my left when I testified before Congress, David Grush, that was the area of expertise that he investigated during his time at the UAP task force. On the other side of the coin, outside of what those programs may be, since about 2017, 2018, the normal military apparatus has, as it always has, been detecting these types of incursions, these close calls, these UAP. But now there was a reduction in stigma. Now the climate had changed. Now there was perhaps something important that this information represented, whether it be aliens or China or something else. And so people started to save that information instead of either dismissing it or deleting it. They started to save it. And with some of the apparatus that has been stood up, such as the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office at the Pentagon, such as a UAP working group at the FBI, and many other places, that information is getting captured and brought forward and collated and starting to be understood. And I suspect a lot of what we're seeing right now is some of that perhaps more ambiguous, lower quality data that comes from those sources. I do have an expectation that there are more convincing, I'll say, higher quality imagery that will fall out of that bucket, and perhaps we'll see that soon. But that says nothing, of course, to what might already exist and what we've learned from it thus far. And I'm eager to see if we do get into those nitty-gritty details as well.
It sounds like the apparatus is also helping agencies share information across agencies where the pockets could have been siloed before, where now, especially if there's an encouragement to capture stuff that may have been thrown away, it's likely now a lot easier to find patterns and to share information, even across organizations within the government.
Well, that's exactly right. And, that's exactly the yeoman's work, as we say in the Navy, that my organization, Americans for Safe Aerospace, has been doing over the past 4 years. We've been connecting with these different agencies across the executive branch, working with Congress, working with the airlines and other organizations in order to collect all this data from disparate sources, identify the problems and the path forward, and start those groups to actually talk to each other. And we've been very successful in that. And, you know, a lot of these started as people that were just earnestly interested within these agencies wanting to get to an answer, much like many of us do, but they had the means to actually push it forward. And I think today is I think the first major public milestone in the work that those folks have been achieving over the past few years. And there's a lot of them. And, you know, I think many of them are the unsung heroes in this whole conversation.
The one thing that the public is not fantastic about is making sense of things on their own. So the headline I read this morning was like, here's all this information, go ahead and make sense of it.
No, it was like the public will have to draw their own conclusions. And I'm thinking, you don't want me drawing my own conclusions. I'm not an expert. What's with the body bag? Like, what's happening? Someone just tell me what's happening.
I get that, you know, and that's something I've thought about as well, right? And I think we've all probably have a social mental model of what that's supposed to look like as far as a president getting in front of a podium and making an extremely declarative statement. You know, I think we first probably all imagined that, you know, watching movies as...
Yo, pretty much we drawing our own conclusions, like she said, because, you know, a lot of us, we knew some of this information, but we, you know, we're drawing our own conclusions, like, okay, this is real, this is not. This fake, this is not believable, you know. But we really waiting on the government to at least, you know, unleash the real truth about what's going on with these aliens, the real truth about who's hiding what from the Congress. And you feel me? Like, you know, how far is this going to go? And how long has this been taking place? How long has this been happening? You know? A lot of people, you know, want to get to the bottom of this. A lot of us, even outside of the government and the Congress, the civilians of the America, the civilians of the earth, you know, the world, to be lied to all these years, gang, I think that right there is the most detrimental part, though, because shit, now it's like, even if they do come out with the truth and tell us, hey, yo, look, this is it, this is that, this is the full disclosure, and here's the movie. Do we believe them, or should we, you know, run because they probably against us or probably lying to us again? You feel me? Steer us into a hole and kill us all. So at this point, you don't know what to believe from these governmental officials. Like I told y'all before, it's some governmental officials right now that's top ranking, and they say out their own mouths that they don't trust the government, and they work with them. That's some of the scariest shit. You understand? Like, how the hell is you working with these government officials and you don't even trust them? You got to make that make sense. You know what I'm saying? That got to make sense, and you don't trust them? I don't know. You know, I wouldn't trust them either. Like, look, half of us, the civilians, we don't trust shit they tell us or shit they say they're going to do, right? But when your own officials say, look, we don't trust them, man, y'all better know something is up and it's deeper than what we think it is. You better believe that. You feel me? That's all I can tell you. You better know something is up and it's deeper than what we all think it is or believe it is. You understand what I'm saying?
As kids and whatnot, you know, I don't know if we still exist in that same political environment.
If not the president, someone who understands aerospace better than me.
But you know, you're absolutely right, and I can't help thinking that, you know, what I just suggested is that maybe it's not someone telling us; it's giving us enough information to make those assessments ourselves. And this is, like I said, is likely the more ambiguous phase. Right. And I think it is going to be a process. I think the data that can be presented can be much less ambiguous, which is going to allow people to draw conclusions faster. But I see, like I said, I see ourselves on a timeline now for these drops. They are going to be incremental and on a schedule. And it's, like I said, my expectation that they'll get less ambiguous as it goes.
Well, you are clearly the person that we wanted to talk to about this. So there's so much more that we want to cover, but we really appreciate you weighing in on this literally breaking news.
Mind the Alex Breakdown is supported by optimizers.
We're very excited to share with you our new nighttime ritual.
I don't like when you eat all my coconut chip bars, though.
Right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including...
I had to skip, y'all. Y'all know I'm skipping, right? I gotta skip past the promotional parts. Sorry, Maya. Let's go.
Growing up in central Massachusetts, got a degree in aerospace engineering from Worcester Polytechnical Institute. I made a decision during college that flying fighter jets, perhaps for the Air Force, perhaps for the Navy, would be the thing that really excited me. It was a bit of a departure and a sudden shift in my life, but definitely in the top two decisions so far in my life. I decided to go with the Navy.
Everybody, they go do aerospace. It seemed like a lot of those aerospace scientists went missing. They was dying, losing their life. But I dig the fact that he went for his dream. If that's what he liked, that he wanted to fly airplanes for the, United States government, United States Army, then that was cool too. Because at the end of the day, the world is all about following your dreams, chasing what you love, doing what you love, being a person that you're supposed to be authentically, not being the fraudulent person that somebody else wants you to be, because that ain't the life you're supposed to lead. But getting into this field that they work in, gang, you see all types of shit that's hidden. You feel me? Aliens, UFOs. You see all type of technology that you probably never thought existed when you working in the field he working in. You understand what I'm saying? And that can get kind of spooky. But let's go deeper and let's see what he's saying. I want to know, what he finna tell us. He got more for us. He got to have more, right? Let's see that.
A higher jet to non-jet ratio, and so that I thought increased my odds of getting what I wanted. And I thought it'd be pretty cool to land on an aircraft carrier as well, of course. I had success during training. I started in Rhode Island, down to Pensacola, Florida, over to Corpus Christi, Texas, where I first flew in the primary flight training for a year. Out of that, out of 13 people that were looking for jets, I was the only person in my class to get selected for it. It's good to learn early in the Navy that the needs of the Navy supersede your own desires. And unfortunately, that was a stark and early example of that in the training pipeline for a lot of folks. But that sent me off to Meridian, Mississippi for another year to go into the intermediate and advanced strike fighter training pipeline, where I flew the T-45 Goshawk in Meridian, Mississippi.
He was learning a lot. I got to give him that. He was. Going state to state, you feel me? You learning different things, different aspects of technology, different aspects of advanced aerospace and things like that. Like, you got to love it. You got to love it. Those experiments or experiences that he had, he probably never get those again. Some of us right now, today, we'll never get those either, because we not even aligned up with that field, with that type of, but I'm sure some of y'all out there that do, y'all probably got military background, military family. Shout out to y'all. But for the most part, I love the fact that he continued to learn and wanted to learn. You would never know any of these things without wanting to know these things, without wanting to learn. And I think learning is the best thing you can do, because knowledge is power. Knowledge is money. Knowledge is everything. You feel me? And if you got enough knowledge, gang, you can't get anything you want. You can't manifest that. But back to these aliens, though, and back to these UFOs, and back to these, UAPs that they're talking about. I'm going to let him furthermore discuss that before I dive into my, opinionated, deep opinion. You understand what I'm saying?
For a year. That's where we learned the basics of what it is to be at a fighter aircraft, dropping fake bombs, dogfighting for the first time, and going to the aircraft carrier during the day for the first time. Out of that, I went to Virginia Beach, Virginia for a year, now learning the F-18 as an officially winged aviator, learning how to employ that weapon system. I finished that after a year and finished what's called priority alpha, which meant I was immediately deployable. So 2 weeks after I finished my training, I found myself in the Middle East on the USS Enterprise. I flew my first combat mission about a week after that.
How old were you at that time?
I was about 26.
Okay.
We came back from that deployment, settled into our routine, really did what I would consider the bulk of our training to be a pilot. We're really learning how to be a combat follower, a combat lead of aircraft, both 2 aircraft and 4 aircraft, and employ in all sorts of environments. And we got ready for our second deployment in 2015, where we deployed to Iraq and Syria aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt to conduct operations against ISIS when that was kicking off. I came back from that deployment and became a advanced strike fighter instructor back in Mississippi. And I did that for 3 years before I got out in 2019. But it was right after our first deployment when we started to upgrade our radar systems in our jets to a much more sophisticated system. And when we did that, we immediately started to notice that out in the working areas over the ocean off the coast of Virginia Beach, where we train, that there were objects that we were detecting with the new radars that shouldn't have been there.
Tell us about the precision shift in detection, because I think that's an important component of this, right? What was different about this equipment, let's say?
Yeah, we were flying the APG-73, which is a mechanically scanned array radar system. Basically, a very large dish out front, a single radar emitter that's high powered, and it more or less physically moves around in order to point that sensor where it needs to go. We upgraded from that to the APG-79, an actively electronically scanned array radar system. And this is several orders of magnitude increase in capability. It's now many hundreds, I'll say, individual computer chip size radars that are fixed that allow us to scan the sky much faster, detect much smaller objects, and have much more confidence in what we're doing, as well as all the fancy stuff like electronic warfare and jamming and all that stuff. So this was a real big capability, and I kind of liken it from going from a black and white TV to an OLED as far as situational awareness goes. And not only that, but our jets are linked. So when we fly out there with other aircraft and their radars are receiving information, we all bring that together and see what other people can see, share what we can see. And so you get a good sense out there when you're flying with a wingman who has an older radar, and you can tell he cannot see that radar track, and yet you can with your newer radar. You kind of see that unfold in real time. But, these things weren't behaving like a normal platform. They were often completely stationary in very high winds, 120, 130 knots. We'd see them at speeds we might be expected to be at 0.6 to 0.8 Mach, about 250, 350 knots. And we'd see them supersonic as well, 1.1, 1.2 Mach. I only saw them heading due east when going at those speeds.
What are they when you say that you see them? What are they? And to your pilot's brain, what do you think is happening, right? Like, what's your first initial thought?
So right now we don't know, what we are thinking when we're seeing this just on the radar. Hey, it's a new radar. They come with errors. Maybe it's software. Maybe the radar is reflecting off of something. This is perhaps just an error. So what we did was ignore it. We just assumed that, even though, like I said, the kinematics were very unusual. It wasn't just something very spotty. And oh, by the way, we have very sophisticated systems that give us a confidence in the quality of the track file we have, right, of our detection. Because, we only carry so many missiles. You don't necessarily have to blow us out of the sky to defeat us, right? If we waste all our missiles, then we're pretty much useless up there. So it's very important to know what we're shooting at. And these are all what we call high quality track files or weapons quality track files. But still, just kind of, even with all the data pointing against it, we still made the assumption it was a radar error.
Do they look like lights? Do they read as physical objects?
On the radar, all we can see, it's like a computer screen, right? So it just gives us an icon. And it's like, hey, it's moving in this direction, it's going this fast, it's at this altitude. And so it's just a total fake representation, artificial representation. But as we got closer, some of our other sensors, such as our AT FLIR system, Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared System, which is a camera system and an infrared, basically a thermal camera, we got close enough where that's slaved to our radar. So as our radar is locked onto it, it's now looking there. It's out of range, but as we get closer, all of a sudden, we can see that there is a physical object there. It's emitting IR energy. Well, we couldn't switch to the camera because we're really only seeing it on IR energy at this point. And then our other systems, electronic warfare, et cetera, start correlating. So now we have multimodal detections of this object, right? And we can no longer just dismiss it as a radar error. Everything is telling us it's real and it's there. And so the next step for us was like, all right, let's go fly up to it and try to see one of these things. And so we picked one that was stationary or slow. We stepped down about 1,000 feet below it. We'd slow down to about 200 knots. So a very easy pass. We're used to crossing with another fighter at 1,200 knots relative velocity. So a 200 knot relative velocity pass, basically stationary. Yeah. So, and by the way, as we're coming to what we call this merge, we have an augmented reality helmet system that is fusing with all our sensor data and drawing a box in the sky to tell us where to look for our radar contact that we're tracking, right? So we have all the fun tools, or as we like to say, the Gucci tools in the cockpit. And we'd fly up to this and we wouldn't be able to see it with our eyeballs. We'd have good radar, we'd have good FLIR footage the entire time, and we'd fly by it and there'd be nothing. We'd turn back around, we'd reacquire on all our sensors, it would be displaced, but still there. And yeah, we didn't know what to make of that.
I just want to clarify, because it's like hard to even imagine. So you're seeing it on all the mechanical equipment, all the sensors, everything in this sophisticated machine you're flying is saying something is there, and yet you go up to it where it's supposed to be and it's not there.
That's correct.
I mean, the place that I go is like, and I know that, you are an elite pilot and you are taught to understand kind of emotional regulation in ways that, like, if you put me in that jet, I would have a very different reaction. But I am curious, and I wonder if you can give us a window into kind of like who you guys are. Is there fear? Like when you see something like that and you say, let's fly up to it, is there any moment of like, could this be an enemy, ship? Like, is there fear? Is there, does it enter your mind that this might be scary? And then when you fly up to an object that is detectable and it's not there, does your stomach drop? Like, does your brain try and make sense of it? Like, what's the emotional experience?
Yeah, well, we are all very regulated, as you can imagine, especially in the cockpit. We're not expecting adversaries up there. We're not expecting to get shot down or anything like that. At worst case, in our mind, I think someone could be flying sensors in our areas that are trying to monitor what we're doing, and we inadvertently hit one. I think that was probably like the worst case scenario that we had in our mind, and still it is a risk. We'll talk about that more later. And so whenever you're going to approach something that you're unsure of what it is, right? And it's not talking to anyone, it's not transmitting anything, that's a pretty big risk, right? And so that, I said we stepped down 1,000 feet. Our normal minimum separation to see something is about 500 feet if we really wanted to get close. So we're giving it a bit of buffer, we're being respectful of the purposeful risk that we're putting ourselves in the platform into, right? Because at the end of the day, we're sitting on $60 million of equipment. Our decisions are based on executing our mission and our training and, preserving that aircraft. And everything else is like a tertiary concern, especially if we can't do anything. So, when you have everything on your sensors, you trust those sensors with your life. So coming to that merge, having everything, we join on aircraft and clouds with those sensors, right? And so to have them all working perfectly and then to not be able to see something with your eyes, it is immediately that stomach drop, because you've now put yourself, you were 3 steps ahead of the jet before that moment, and now you're behind it because you put yourself purposely into this tiny piece of the sky with an unknown object, and now you can't even see it. You've lost visual of it at the merge. So, now your essay bucket just went way down.
And to clarify for anyone listening who might have missed that, like, you use these sensors to merge in the sky, like where 2 planes are connecting to one another. It's like refueling. Is that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've had to join on refuelers in thunderstorms with my radar. You get close enough to visually see, but these are things we literally trust our life with every day. Right. And so to have it suddenly fail in such a shocking way, you can only presume that either your eyesight failed or the thing is exhibiting some type of optical signal management that we're not familiar with.
Well, and I think also the reason that I wanted to have you kind of explain the emotional state is that so many conversations about what we're talking about are emotional. And many people go down all sorts of rabbit holes. And there's definitely a type of personality that many of us can associate with people who want to believe, right, that UAPs are alien intelligence. But I think it's important for people to remember you are a professional and you are trained to handle a tremendous amount of complexity and confusion in real time. So your initial assumption is not, I found a UFO. It's, there's something going on here and we have a certain amount of data, and the data needs to line up with what all of us would assume is a logical approach to a confusing situation.
Well, that's exactly right. For us, we like to say we bucket information, we compartmentalize information often, right? You can't go out and drop a bomb on a wrong target and hurt people that you shouldn't have, and then be so distraught you can't land on an aircraft carrier in 3 hours, right? And so we're very used to kind of, putting things into their appropriate corner, I'll say, during flight. And that's exactly what I did, and I know others did as well with this. They said, okay, is this a risk to the mission that I'm trying to execute upon now? If I happen to have this small amount of agency at some point in my flight, which sometimes we do, then we'll go up and expect it. But, when you come away from that excursion with more questions instead of answers, you've kind of just put yourself in a bad spot. And so then you just, you try to leave it alone. But, it kind of came to a head about 2 weeks later. We're trying to see these things, we can't see them, but then 2 aircraft on just normal, nice sunny day, were flying out to that working area, and they were in formation, but 150 feet apart, flying right into the entry point of all those working areas at a very specific altitude and GPS location. And as soon as they crossed that threshold, one of these objects went in between the 2 aircraft, about 50 feet from the lead aircraft, his cockpit, which is basically just chance that they didn't hit at that point. Again, we used a 500-foot safety bubble. He immediately canceled the flight, came back home. He was in the ready room with a look of shock on his face when he saw it. He's just like, I almost hit one of those fucking things. And we didn't have a name for them, but we all kind of were hushly talking about it after the debriefs.
Did you report it at this point to anyone, or y'all are just talking among yourselves?
It's not coming up in any official debriefs. It's kind of like, all right, flight's done, debrief's done. Maybe we're having a beer in the ready room. It's like, well, so, hey, what was that thing that we were seeing out there, right? It wasn't incorporated into the official debrief in any sense. And so, I was, like I said, I was the one that saw him in the ready room. I was like, well, what did it look like? And he just described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, with the points of the cube touching the inner circumference of that sphere. And to your point, this is now a documentable near miss, right? We need to file a hazard report. The squadron safety officer needs to do the report. And as he did that, he heard the murmurings that this wasn't the first time something like this might have happened. And as it turned out, there were 4 other near misses that had occurred just in the previous 5 or 6 weeks, all of which went unreported. And so that there is like the big, I think, kind of psychological issue, right? Because to your point, we're highly trained. And not only that, we're highly motivated to be the best that we possibly can, and not just dropping bombs and flying formation, but in all the little administrative things that make those tactical things actually happen, right? Those are just as important, just not as sexy. And safety instances are absolutely one of those things. Some of these assets we fly are considered strategic assets, you know?
I mean, you're listing all the reasons why people like me and Jonathan do not become Navy fighter pilots. Like, you know that image of Kermit the Frog, like freaking out on stage and flailing about? That's kind of, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That would be me in the plane, like at the briefing. That's why we don't get those jobs. We do other things.
We all feel like that somewhere inside, I think, you know? I think even just at the little kids say, I can't believe I get to do this. But, you know, for me, that was kind of shocking to know that 4 other incidences, each with 2 aircrew in them, 8 people essentially collectively gone silent on this and allowed this issue to percolate, this one weird side issue. Well,
believe it or not, it has percolated, ladies and gentlemen. You know, what they didn't want to percolate has percolated, and you know, I'm afraid that it gotten out of hand, so far out of hand that it's almost like a self-disclosure, right? I mean, to me at least. And they don't want us to find out. But all these discoveries, findings, all of these exposures, whistleblowers, what else did they literally expect?
Kind of my first brush, I'm like, whoa, this is a problem. I don't know what it is, but regardless, you know, that's a problem, right? Because now, what about the squadron right down the hall from us, you know, that flies in the same area with the same jet? Do they know about this? Are they having near misses? Who knows? We're not talking about this.
Mind Bialik's breakdown is supported by Rula.
No matter how you handle emotional stress or life's challenges, everyone can benefit from therapy. Affordable and accessible mental health care shouldn't be out of reach, but too often is. That's where most online therapy platforms fall short. Rula does things differently.
Each other, you know, if you're not sending your radar downrange, it's harder to know you're there, right? So that's kind of how fighter employments work. Active radars versus passive detection, and so he was basically all passive at that time as he's flying out there. And like I said, perhaps they surprise each other a bit. So that, you know, that was kind of an interesting, you know, kind of moment in the squadron. And we all kind of collectively, you know, kind of looked around, not really sure what to do. But now that it was a documented safety issue, there was no more, well, let's go fly up to it and check it out, right? Because now it's just all risk. And so that's what we did. We avoided them from that point out. They would be there pretty much every day, 3 to 5 to 8 of them in the areas, kind of all doing their own thing. Sometimes they would be blocking areas that we needed to work in, and we had to cancel training. And that went on without really me having any organized understanding of how much it was happening for the next couple of years.
Years? You feel good about years?
No, I don't. But that's exactly right. And of course, we're very busy. You know, we're going through some of the hardest training in our life.
Yeah, but like you're busy trying not to freak the fuck out about things in the sky that we can't explain that also can't be really detected reliably.
Now, we weren't expecting anything back from the safety report, but, you know, it was passed up the chain. And I think everyone had this general expectation that perhaps it was China or someone else that was doing something, right? Either confusing us to think it was doing something that was superior or truly was doing something superior, but either way, they were there. And that because it was passed up the chain, you know, perhaps counterintelligence would get involved or Coast Guard or whoever it is. It's not our responsibility to hunt those types of things down. We're an expeditionary. Our combat is out somewhere else. That's the Air Force and National Guard or National Guard. So that was kind of the expectation.
But years and seeing different things and trying to explain to people in your family like what the fuck it is, or people in your team and your camp like what the hell is it? Come on now. Come on now. They kept him away that long from his people. They ain't training so many years. Man. Hell no. I don't want to go to the military. I don't want to go to the army. Hell no. Y'all got me fucked up.
But that never happened, and it kept coming. We never heard anything back. And then we left in 2015 to get ready for our next deployment. And we went off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt for about a month for training. And unbeknownst to me at the time, but we had dozens of incidences down there. They were either already there or they followed us down. But there was a notable incident that I was aware of. There was a flight that we were on, large air-to-air mission. The way it works is you kind of all go out there together, and then as you fight, people run out of fuel at different times, and people go back by themselves, but they have to wait for the carrier to open up for landing. So you hang out at a very fuel-efficient fuel flow speed, and you just kind of hang out for a bit, maybe 15 minutes. And so while they were doing that, and these are two very good friends of mine. One of them was in my wedding party. We went through training together. We ended up in the same fleet squadron together. We did specialized training together. All very good friends. And one of them actually won top fighter pilot on the East Coast one of these years as well. A pretty good honor. They detected numerous objects east of the aircraft carrier. We're already 350 miles out to sea right now off the coast of Jacksonville. Now they're detecting these objects, and they decided to essentially go spin over and take a look. They crossed one group that was 4 objects in a wall with about a mile. When I say a wall, like side by side, but a mile in between. They captured one of the objects on their FLIR. This footage was later released under the title of the Go Fast video, and then they continued their trek over to the main group, which was one large gimbal-like object, which was later released under the name Gimbal in a 2017 New York Times article. And behind that gimbal object was another small fleet of aircraft or vehicles or objects, 5 to 8 of them, if I recall, in a V formation. And they all turned direction 180 degrees. They all broke apart, no like clean turn, and then reformed the other direction. The gimbal object just kind of bounced and followed that group. We hadn't seen an object like the gimbal. It was bigger. It was more defined with the energy it was putting out, the infrared energy. It twisted and rotated in strange ways. And after a reconstruction, learned that the twisting actually represented a vertical turn to change its direction 180 degrees to follow those other craft.
Do we have craft that can do that?
F-18 certainly can do a vertical turn, but it takes about 6,000 feet of turn radius to do it. And then we can certainly, have a small drone, of course, make a small, 100-foot turn. But the question necessarily is it exhibiting technology? Like nothing I described there is something we can't replicate. The question is, why are these within a controlled airspace almost 400 miles off the coast of Jacksonville? Where did they come from? What are they doing? How are they flying in formation, right? Why are we not tracking this? And what is ultimately their intent?
The word following is haunting me. I don't know if it's haunted you, but the notion that something might follow you, right, from one base to another across hundreds and hundreds of miles, without kind of revealing anything that you don't want to reveal, was there anything about the work that you were doing as a pilot, the work that you were doing in terms of preparation for war, that someone might be interested in for any particular reason?
Yeah, I'll actually push back and say it's not unusual. And the Russians love to follow us around. And particularly during that workup cycle, we were aware and briefed on threats, right? So we were briefed on all these types of threats. This is very common, even up in Virginia Beach off the coast, right? It's international waters. And there's really nothing we can do. So briefed in on all that type of activity, but of course, this isn't included, and we're not, like I said, we could talk more about the kinematics of what was happening over Virginia Beach, but at least what was just recorded over, off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, the technology isn't, exceeding the capabilities other than time on station or point of origin, right? And these are terms I'm using specifically because when we are doing our internal math on whether we were going to shoot somebody or not, these are considerations that we think about when we start to define whether they're hostile or not. All right. So where do these things come from?
Damn, so those considerations to shoot somebody is real deep. You feel me? It look like they go, you feel me, to the extreme to recognize or, detect that they want to blow your motherfucking heart out. You understand what I'm saying? So, at the end of the day, everything he's saying is the truth. He's like, damn, why ain't they been detected? Why ain't they following them? Who else knew about them? Why are they able to fly in airspace and protect the airspace? You feel me? Watch airspace. Like, why? What's going on? And that's a good question. If you ask me.
Are they being launched from a ship? Are they submarine launched? Are they dropping down from space? Is it China? A lot more questions than answers right now, right? And so, I'm describing this whole scenario to you because the crew came back and I was called down to the intel space because, again, I was good friends with the crew. Someone told me he caught something cool, so I went down there to watch. And that's, I watched all their displays being recorded. And those, like I said, videos ultimately came out in 2017 in a New York Times article. But before I get to that, when I was down in that classified space watching those videos, I heard the admiral was coming down and I was very keen to see what his reaction was to the videos. And so I watched him come in and I kind of slink back to the back of the room so I can get kicked out. And he came in, watched the videos for about 6 seconds, made a sound and walked out. And I was immediately like, he's seen these before. I don't even think he watched the full video. And as I indicated earlier, we had been having dozens of instances during this period, but I was only aware of what our squadron had. As it turned out, that admiral left the room, went upstairs and sent an urgent email with the subject line, urgent safety of flight issue, to all the major commands on the East Coast, including my now friend's command, Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who was the chief meteorologist in the Navy at the time out of Jacksonville, Florida. He received that email and also advises one of my organizations now, directly from the admiral, stating that we were having these dozens of near misses with unknown objects over the aircraft carrier during this training exercise, and that they were at risk of canceling the entire exercise due to these instances. And this is a major exercise to prepare us to relieve the currently deployed aircraft carrier. So this has, massive downrange ramifications. So this was something that our air wing had to deal with quite a bit. But, we finished that classified debrief. We went back to the ready room and we're chatting about it and essentially told to stop talking about it and get back to work. And that's what we did for the next few weeks until we got ready and deployed out back to the Middle East a couple months later.
Based on that reaction, based on what happened from it, if you had to guess, how long do you think things like this have been going on that had gone undetected or unreported?
Well, I will say this. We started, I guess I didn't even mention the dates, but, we started seeing these when we upgraded our radar late 2012. And this is now a workup cycle in 2015. So at least that time period, but that's when we upgraded our radars. I I have high confidence this was happening much earlier. And, I've talked to many pilots, both while I was in the Navy and now, who had their, their ghost stories about things that they saw either because, another controller told them to zoom in with their older radars in this spot, or they happened to be close enough. So I do think it was going on before. I just don't think we had sophisticated enough tools to detect them like we can now.
It's kind of unbelievable, right? It's like when we talk about the rise in reports of anything, whether it's rates of autism or, whatever it is, you have to know that there's a shift in our ability to report, our ability to identify. But I think that's what's so unique and special about this time in history and the time that we're living through literally even this morning.
I agree. I couldn't agree any more with her. You feel me? Because like a lot of us right now all over the world is waking up. We're using our abilities. We tapping into our inner self. We understanding the patterns and the cycles, and we seeing the bullshit, the lies that they're using to keep things hidden. You feel me? Things self-subliminal. We peeping the bullshit that they doing, man. So, at the end of the day, if y'all want to finish that video, man, you got to go over there to my Unveiling podcast, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you share this video here. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you have, hit that like button, smash that like button. You understand what I'm saying? Make sure you take this video to somebody who needs to hear it. You understand what I'm saying? I love y'all. Y'all make sure y'all take care. I am out.